Everyone, welcome to another video, and in this video we are going to review leases. I know a lot of you are trying to find accommodations right now, and I know how challenging it can be. First of all, I've made a few videos before on accommodation, so you could check it out. I'm going to leave that link in the description as usual, and I have made written a blog as well on Gradical's website that will be in description as well. I also want to pitch Discord. Discord is a great platform. We have over 5,000 members on it. You can check that out as well. Now, what I was planning to do is like, hey, why not show my lease, my previous lease, and walk you through it and tell you what you need to be kind of careful about, because leases can be very overwhelming, especially the US leases, and there's a lot of lease scams also which happens, which you could be saved from as well. Whenever you're getting an accommodation, right, you need to look at if the accommodation is trustworthy or not. Go to Zillow, go to Redfin, go to ask a few of your seniors that, hey, I'm planning to take this accommodation. Is this reliable? Is this legit? And if you're looking at an apartment building, it's usually not the case. Like, scams are not happening at the apartment building, but more of individual leases, individual house leases, because a lot of times, like in cities like New York or big cities like San Francisco, people are renting out apartment buildings, and that's where something scammy can happen. I will crowdsource some of the data and talk to people who have been scammed previously and make a video on it. But for now, I want to review the lease with you and show you what you need to be careful about and what you need to watch out for. Now let's look at this lease I have right here. This is the lease while I was living in Phoenix, and this was my lease in 2020. Things have changed drastically. Actually, this was my lease in 2019, but I think something changed, and that's why they had to made a addendum, and that's why it says 2020 here. But let's look at the lease. Okay, right here my name is mentioned and my roommate's name is mentioned. It's good to have both of the names, because in case they need to make a change, it's always easier. Okay, and if you have both person's name, they both are responsible for rent. Let's say somebody bails out, let's say Himanshu would have bailed out, I would be in a flux because I had to pay a rent if it was only my name on the lease. But in this case, both of our names are on the lease, so it's good because both of us are responsible for payments. This mentions the company which we are partnering or which we have the lease with, the owners of the property. Here it was the address and the apartment number, so I just blurred it out. The city, the zip code, some other legal jargon, but this is what you need to figure out. So the apartment will only be occupied only by you. Now in this case, it would be my name here and Himanshu's name. That's all, two people. If it was somebody else, like let's say one more roommate we had to put that person's name here as well. It's always better when you're meeting new people and when you're getting leases with new people to have everybody's name on the lease. I know in a lot of states and a lot of big cities it might not be the case, but that's an ideal scenario. That's what I'm telling you. Now here it mentions lease term, that 12th day of August 2020 and ends in 2021. Now I know, because what happens was we had a lease from August to August, and this was our lease renewed. So this was our lease renewed to 2021. Now it also says that if you want to renew your lease, you have to tell them 60 days in advance. So let's say my lease is getting over on July 30th. I need to tell them by June 1st that I'm going to renew my lease. In case you want to leave that apartment, you also have to give them a 2 months notice. They have mentioned that in case if this area or this section was left blank, a 30 days notice would be necessary. Now you need to be careful about how much notice you have to give, and you have to be mindful about it, because in case you have a 1 year course, right, you would need to leave, and that's when you need to give them enough time, like, hey, I want to leave an apartment and this is my notice for me to leave the apartment. Our security deposit was $1625, which was refundable, and $225 admin fees and a non-refundable deposit. That's what it mentions. Now, it also says the security deposit is held by property owner. In the case we vacate, the security deposit will be refunded, but they will cut down the amount which, let's say we damage the apartment, they will cut down the amount and they'll give us the security deposit minus the amount which they use to repair the apartments, and that's what the amount they will give us. Usually if the apartment is nice enough, they'll give you the whole security deposit back, but sometimes apartment companies are really douchey, property managers are really douchey, and they might cut a bigger chunk of amount than they told you to. A lot of times what happens is that we screw something in and we damage the kitchen a little bit. There is always an alternative to that. For example, there is a thing which comes under the stove here, under the electric stove. You could find that alternative for in Walmart for like $10, but they charge 20 or 30 bucks for that. So these cases you need to be careful about. Let's say a blinds I have, right? A blind came off. You just need to tell them that, hey, can you repair it before you vacate the apartment, so that they can repair it while you're still there and they don't charge you an extra amount from your refundable deposit. It says I have two apartment keys. If there was one more person on my apartment lease, I would have gotten one more key. It's clearly mentioned what my rent was, and it also mentions how I need to pay. Most of the apartment complexes do not take cash. They will take a check, or they will encourage you to pay through the online portal. I like to pay through online portal, and I like to pay through the bank account, not through credit cards or not through debit cards, because on debit cards and credit cards they charge a 3% fee. You need to be careful about it. Just some more thing, that one, like, our lease was renewing for 20 days first, and then it will go month to month. So they have prorated our rent. Now what prorating means is that, let's say your lease starts at 10th of August. So they will prorate your rent from 10th to August to 30th of August. That means they'll only charge you 20 months of rent, and then they'll go month to month after that. They usually don't do 10th August to 10th September. That's just not the norm. So they will prorate the first month's rent. It exactly says when the rent is due. If you don't pay a rent, a flat rate of $200 will be charged as a fine that you haven't paid your rent quicker. So all the numbers are very clearly. It says, I don't know what LOP was, but I know the utility was 50.64. That's gas and property stuff, like you have to pay for the property's electricity as well. So that whole electricity bill gets divided among all the residents. It's just general stuff. I'm going to put a screenshot here on what those utility charges are. There's like an environmental fee as well, and there's like sewer charge and trash charge, and all of these things get totaled up to like $50. They add a lot of like random stuff, honestly, but you just need to be careful about, like, they are not charging you or they're not overcharging you on those stuff. For example, in our apartment case, they were charging a $25 valet trash fee, which we couldn't get rid of. It was just a part of them to keep the apartment more cleaner. Our apartment was a little bit bougier as compared to the student apartment which I was living at before while I was at Purdue. So they were charging us like some random stuff like that. They have clearly mentioned that the replacement lock and keys would cost $75. Now, you could go to Home Depot and I think get a duplicate key for $10 or so. So do that if you have a lot of people living in the apartment, or that you might be losing a key. Now, renters insurance is another big one. Renters insurance is in case of theft, or in case of something happens to your apartment, in case there's a water leak. Usually apartments they are like, we don't take responsibility of it. That's where your renters insurance kicks in. Renters insurance is almost like really cheap, honestly, because I haven't paid more than $10 for renter's insurance. I also have lived with only like in 2 bedroom apartments up until now. So maybe in 3 bedroom apartment it's a little bit more, but per month it's not going to cost you more than $5 per person if you're living in like two-person apartment or 3-person apartment. I use Geico's renters insurance. You could be using another renters insurance. Sometimes the apartment provides renters insurance, but in this lease case, they were not providing renters insurance, and that's why they said you required to purchase personal liability insurance, and they clearly mention how much that amount would be. That's 100,000. That doesn't mean that you need to purchase $100,000 of renters insurance. It just says that you need $100,000 worth of coverage on your apartment. Um, Again, I've used Geico's. I have used a couple of more, which I'm going to leave the link in description as well. Let's look at reimbursement. So again, you must promptly reimburse us for loss in case we damage the windows, in case we damage, there's like a big damage on the drywall, or in case we damage their kitchen, like the cabinets or something. You just need to be a little bit more careful and proactive about it. For example, in my previous apartment, I used to screw a lot of stuff, right? So what I did was I bought this thing off Amazon. It's called 3M putty, and you just put that in the drywall, and there's like a scraper tool which you scrape off, and there is a thing called Loto. They sell this on Amazon, and it's like a paint, and most of these apartments have similar paint colors, so you can get a color chart from that company and match that paint and then paint over that drywall so that it looks as good as new. Because sometimes when you're screwing stuff off, there's a big hole and they can be a little finicky about it, but as a construction guy myself, I knew how to fix it, so I'm giving you a recommendation as well. Again, just some stuff like if something happens, you need to be careful about this. Now, in case of cold places, I need to give you a warning. In case of cold places during winters, there's could be cases of burst pipe. This happened in Texas recently. What happens is that if you don't have the water running all the time, just tripping through the taps, water can freeze in the pipes because it's so cold outside, and the pipes can burst. So during winters, even if you are at the apartment, and even if you are not at the apartment or you leave the apartment, turn on the AC or turn on the heat to like 75 or 80, and also like just turn on or just rotate the taps to a little bit so that the water is just dripping just enough, so that there's just enough water flow so that the pipes don't burst. That thing. In this case, it's different. Removal after abandonment, judicial eviction, or other means. This wouldn't happen to you because I know, we are responsible people. We pay our rents always. This happens when people do not pay their rents, and landlords have to take some measures to throw people out. In that case, it's like in case of eviction, these things would be relevant to you. So this clause is a little bit worrisome sometimes, because this says that in case they make some construction changes and there's some delay, they are not responsible for it. Again, this is just how legal documents are, and these legal documents are of course favoring the property managers. This never happens. The property has to maintain a certain reputation for themselves, so they will mention that in case of delay of occupancy, they are not responsible for it, but again, just a legal jargon. Okay, while you're living at the apartment, community policy or rules, don't worry about it, just regular stuff. Glass containers are prohibited in all common areas. Conducting any kind of business like Airbnbs or VRBO, there's another website just like Airbnb. So you can't sublet the apartment. Just be careful about that. And then also you can't be conducting businesses from your apartment. You could be working from home, but you just can't be conducting businesses of your own, which wouldn't happen in our case since we are international students. In case of parking, just again, some of the legal jargons, they don't really care about it that much. I haven't seen a case where some apartment company has giving people trouble because of all of these things. If you have a relevant parking spot, then you would park. But as an international student, right away we don't have a parking spot, or we don't really care about a parking spot. So this wouldn't be really relevant to us. Let's look at release of resident. Again, you won't be released from this lease contract for any reason. So in case you say that, hey, I want to go within 6 months, right? You are like, I'm going to go. If there's not a solid reason, you are still bound by the lease contract, that is 12 months. So you still would be responsible for paying 12 months of rent. Just another thing. Now, smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, all of these apartments have a smoke detector. It's illegal to cover those smoke detectors or take it out. I know some of the Indian students because, while we are cooking, there would be some smoke. If there's a window in the kitchen, make sure you open the window. But I know a lot of people have taken out the smoke detector. That's a federal crime to take out smoke detector. That can cause a fire, which is it goes undetected and can cause the whole building on fire. So tampering with any of the smoke detectors and any of the carbon monoxide detectors is a federal crime. So you shouldn't be doing that. Just be careful about it. Whenever there's much more smoke in your house, just kind of air it out. It's not a problem. And there's also a button on the smoke detector which you can just press to turn it off. It says no holes or stickers are allowed inside or outside the apartment. Reasonable small nail holes for hanging pictures. Again, the same thing which I mentioned, you can screw it in, but if you cover it, you should be fine. And small like nail and hammer stuff, they don't really care about it. In our case, like right now in my apartment, this apartment only had one lock. So what I did was I screwed on a chitkani, a bolt, like a latch lock. I will fill up the spaces, but I just felt like a latch lock was necessary. I could have asked the apartment people first, but I just went ahead and did it. Usually apartments have 2 locks and that's what's recommended. Now, in case of animals, you can't have pets without them knowing. We have 2 pets and we pay a pet rent for it. And that's why I recommend everybody who is new to the US to not have pets, because that will cost you a pet deposit, that will cost you a pet rent per month, and it's just a lot more effort for you. So by law, all of the apartment property owners or landlords have to give you a 2 days notice or a day notice, and they will need your permission before they enter your property. By law, they cannot enter your property without telling you. So every time I tell them like, hey, there's something I need to get repaired at my apartment, they need to ask me that, hey, do we have a permission, or do we have permission to enter your property? And if I say yes, you have the permission, then only they can enter. You need to be just careful about that. Replacements and subletting. In case of replacements, you cannot just sublet. I have done that myself. I have subletted my apartment, and I have sublet an apartment myself without actually giving the application fee. Again, it's not recommended, but I know people do it. You could do it as well, but just be aware that landlords shouldn't know about it. I recently sublet my apartment, my Phoenix apartment. I still had the lease, so I sublet it to another guy, and I did the procedure very legally. I added him on as as a new resident on the lease, and I also took off myself from the lease, so that person is responsible for the rent and I'm not responsible anymore. Okay, so when you come to the US, you have a certain responsibilities, and you have a social security number, you have a credit to maintain, and if you do not pay rent, your credit is going to affect. Again, wouldn't happen in an international case, but something they need to tell you. contacting you by signing this lease. You are agreeing that we may represent, we, our representatives or agent may contact you. You agree that we may contact you using any of the contact information giving on this lease. Just more legal jargon. Move out procedure. Move out date can't be changed. If you tell them that you need to move out, your moving out date would be the last day of your lease. You could move out earlier and they could do an inspection later, and they could just send you the security deposit check later on at the new address. You could always email them the new address you're moving to. In terms of cleaning, clean the apartment. I'm telling you, it will take you 2-3 hours, but clean the apartment thoroughly, because if you'll clean the apartment, they will be able to see it clearly that you took care of the apartment, and it's going to be nice. But if you clean the apartment, they are going to give you your full security deposit, and it's going to be more easier on you. One more clause which I saw here is that you may be present at move out inspection if you notify us in advance. That means if you notify them, you could be at the inspection and you could see what they're going through, and you could be a little bit more proactive and see like, hey, why are you cutting money for this particular thing? This is completely fine, Just one more thing to kind of avoid scams, when landlords may cut off some more of your security deposit as compared to if you are there. My address is right here. Some additional taxes, the special provisions like these additional taxes, 2.3 Arizona state taxes, just some more stuff. And then addendum, let's see what this is about. Just community policies, nothing major, just rules of what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. In case of emergency, you should be calling dial 911. You have one vehicle per person. Of course, as a student, you might not have that vehicle. Fire hazards, just small stuff. Grills are not allowed. Valet trash service, just more small stuff. That's it. So this is the lease which I had. I'm going to leave the lease link in description. I'm going to upload it on Google Drive so that you can kind of double check your lease and my lease and see what's good and what's not. But let me know in the comment section if you are kind of figuring out your leases and what are the things which kind of worrying you and which is not, and I can help you out in the comment section below. But anyways, thank you so much guys for watching this video. I hope this one was useful, and again, ask me questions about leases. I'm going to leave the link in description of this lease and some of the accommodation videos I've made previously. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Take care everyone.